Since the age of 15, I've owned my own business with my dad, and I've been an entrepreneur ever since. Working with my dad, I've seen firsthand how my generation, Gen Z, is going to click and clash with the other generations. 3 years ago, my dad, a classic Gen Xer, and I got into one of the biggest fights in our business. It was around the first meeting with who has become one of our biggest clients. I landed us the meeting, I prepared all the materials, I answered all of the client's questions, and I even beat my dad to the meeting. So what was this fight about? Well, apparently I should have told my dad I was Skyping into the meeting. My dad explained to me that as a Gen Xer, he would have never risked the technology not working and ruining our chances to make a dynamic first impression. Fair point, until I explained to him that in my eyes, as a Gen Zer, I was at that meeting. In today's world, you can shop in a store or buy something online. You can write somebody a handwritten note or DM them on Instagram. You can show up at the office or log in from home. The question has always been, what is better, physical or digital? Well, I'm here to tell you that for my generation, Gen Z, we see no difference. We now live in what I call the phygital world, where for every physical element, there's a digital equivalent, where the line between the two worlds has not just been blurred, it's been completely eliminated. Now, it's important to understand that this elimination between the two worlds happened during my generation's formative years, the time in which your generational personality is crafted. That's the theory behind generational differences. Each generation experiences unique events and conditions during their formative years and therefore adapt a unique lens at which they look at the world. I'll give you an example. If you ask a baby boomer what their earliest memory of space exploration is, they'll tell you they remember NASA landing on the moon. These government agencies were exciting and anything was possible. You ask the same question to a Gen Xer, they'll tell you they remember NASA and the Space Shuttle Challenger. No longer were these government agencies incredible, they were cutting corners and even wasting money. Now you ask my generation what our earliest memory of space exploration is, NASA's not even in the answer. We've only seen space exploration happen with independent businesses like SpaceX. So who is my generation? If you haven't heard a lot about Gen Z, I'm not surprised, as it seems everyone is so focused on millennials and is unaware that there's a new generation showing up, let alone one that is so drastically different. Gen Z is here. We were born between the years 1995 and 2012. The leading edge is already 23. We are 78 million strong, and we make up 26% of the US population. We can't treat my generation like millennials or the other generations because it will backfire, because business leaders will not be ready when traits like phygital show up in the workplace. Ask a Gen Xer boss, I was not at that meeting. Ask a Gen Zer, I was there. First, phygital is going to change the way we work. When it comes to technology, growing up in the phygital world as a Gen Zer, it takes a lot to get you excited. Other generations tend to get very excited about new technology showing up in the workplace, but of course they do. They've had to pioneer for technological advancement their entire careers. Gen Xers likely remember being digital pioneers in the late 90s, begging their business leaders for access to the internet. Another generation goes by, millennials were also pioneering as they pleaded their bosses to access to social media. In 2009, it was reported that 54% of US companies had banned access to social media. Now look at my generation. We've only known a world where phones are smart. Technology has never been something that we've had to learn to accept. Technology is something that we expect to be there to do anything. We are not digital pioneers at all. We are digital natives. And it takes a lot to get us excited about new technology. It's no longer just enough to have technology in the workplace. Gen Z is going to raise the bar when it comes to how effectively it is used. Now, more than just raising the bar, phygital, when it enters the workplace, is going to redefine space. For Gen Z, you are truly going to have to explain to us what the office really is. Is it a physical space with walls, cubicles, and inspirational messages written on those walls? Or is it where the closest Wi-Fi connection is so you can log on and log in? For Gen Z, work is no longer a place at all. Now, more than redefining space, phygital is going to redefine pace. The argument of how to balance your work and personal life is a topic that never seems to go away. Baby boomers, Xers, and millennials have continuously fought to figure out the best way to do this. Now, the most widely accepted model is the idea of work-life balance. This idea suggests that from 9 to 5 you work, and the rest of your time is dedicated to your personal life. Well, sometimes work or life comes on too strong, and then we all have to learn how to balance it all. But the problem is, clearly no one's really figured out how to do this yet, otherwise it wouldn't be such a hot topic. You see, for Gen Z in the phygital world, this model is confusing. Because remember, work has no specific time, or work has no specific place, so why should it have such a specific time? Why are we trying to separate 9 to 5 from the rest of our day? In the phygital world, we know that work and life both happen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You should be able to step away from your job responsibilities in the middle of the day without feeling guilty, because chances are you'll be logging on from home later that night. Now, as I talk to you about raising the bar with technology and redefining space and pace, I hope you get excited. Now, I can't deny, sure, change is scary, but I believe that every young generation likes to shake up the workplace, and that's not such a bad thing. The problem is that when a new generation shows up in the workplace with new ideas or new concepts, we go right to the place of judging them and even worse, stereotyping them. We try to figure out who's right, who's wrong, who's better, or who's worse. I encourage you instead to embrace Gen Z and what we have to offer. Thank you.
Jonah, you said your generation wants face-to-face interaction. It's happening right now with all of us. But face-to-face interaction could mean in-person or video chat. Explain what you mean by this.
Yeah, so that's definitely a controversial point, like this idea of what is defined as face-to-face conversation. So in our latest study, which we've now asked this question over, probably 10 times, as we say, what is your preferred mode of communication? And the 4 choices we give are email, text, phone, or face-to-face. And overwhelmingly, each time we've run the study, the answer is face-to-face communication. I think the latest time it was 84, just under 85% of Gen Z said that they prefer face-to-face communication. Now, out of that 85%, over half would say that they would define a Zoom call, Hangout, whatever any of the platforms as a face-to-face conversation. And it's kind of what we talk about is, Gen Z lives in what we label the phygital world, where the physical and digital worlds are the line between the two. Phygital.
Phygital, got it.
It's one of our, it's a concept that
we'll do a spelling contest.
Yeah, we'll do that at the end. But where Gen Z starts to, eliminate the line between the physical and digital spaces. Now, ideally, most of those respondents say that conversation would happen in a room like this. But, if I can see your face, you can see mine, and we're talking, like we are in today's world, in today's work, where most, as we've heard of the past conversations today, are in a remote environment. It's as close as a lot of Gen Zers are getting, especially professionally. So I think that they're starting to more so define that as face-to-face communication.
Generation Z.
Generation Z.
Generation Z. Generation Z.
What distinguishes this group?
Not only are they competitive, but really independent. Another thing that we know about this generation they're really going to challenge is the pace at which things get done.
Jonah Stillman, the 18-year-old the Vikings hired to serve as a Gen Z advisor.
There's 72.8 million Gen Zers, and if you're not willing to work hard, one of the other ones is going to come along and steal your job.
From the NASDAQ market site in Times Square, joining us today for a special discussion about their book, Gen Z at Work, we have authors David Stillman and Jonah Stillman.
You know what happens is a lot of you look at someone like Jonah and you're like, wait a minute, isn't he just a millennial? And I'm here to say no. And a lot of you might be telling me, oh my goodness, you mean I have to get to know a whole new generation? And the answer is yes.
Please welcome Jonah Stillman!
We are not millennials. We are our own generation. It shocks me how many leaders in the business world don't have my generation on their radar yet. For Gen Z, the real world and the virtual world just completely overlap. Whether we're loading groceries into the store at the supermarket or adding to cart on Amazon, it is all one and the same.
We cannot accuse this generation of being illiterate. They might type LOL or they might type OMG, but that is still writing.
Our parents didn't necessarily tell us that we could be the next president or an astronaut. They were very clear with our generation at a young age that this isn't such a pretty world and you've got to fight for what you want.
This is the YouTube generation when it comes to learning and development. What do? You start, you run into trouble, you log on, learn, and go back to work.
On average, how long is Gen Z's attention span? This is a very short 8 seconds. If we're refreshing our Twitter feeds at least hourly, no longer are quarterly updates gonna fly.
Gen Z hates open office concept. 50% of them want their own office. So here's a generation where 75% are looking for place of employment where I could have multiple roles at the same time. 35% of Gen Z would rather share socks than an office space. And we predict a lot of clashes between Gen Z and the millennials. Why? Millennials are the most collaborative generation. They think in a group, they work in a group, and now comes a generation that's a lot more independent. We're gonna see collisions big time if we're not ready for this independent generation. Now, part of me was so happy he had made it to the meeting, but I can't lie, part of me just knew he was gonna give me such a hard time for beating me to the meeting. So sure enough, she walks us down to the conference room. I walk in and I'm looking around and I said, "So where's Jonah?" And she literally said to me, "Oh, he's joining us via Skype."
Trust me, I heard about that for weeks. If you want to jump back in the app, click on vote. We want to know in this situation who you think was right. If you think I was right, click A. And if you think my dad was right, click B. I'm not joking. When I was younger, he literally used to tell me if anyone gets a participation award, it's him, because we got there and we were on time. My dad is an absolute Apple freak. So when a new product comes out, of course, he's all about it. Apple Watch, one of his favorite. So he gets it, it comes out, he sets it all up, and a couple days later, I give him a call. So I'm sitting there, I'm ringing, and the phone answers, and he's, "Hello?" And I'm singing on the other end like, whoa, what is happening? So he's like, "Can you hear me? I can hear you great, this is awesome." I'm like, "Yeah, Dad, they can hear you in Europe. Why are you shouting?"
I work, I've got my life, trying to do both. They don't see it as a balance. What they go for is what we call work-life blend. And that is work and life is 24/7. Our job isn't just from 9 to 5, it's all the time, and my life is all the time. We want to be proactive here because the leading edge is just graduating. We can get to know what makes them unique. When we get calls in a few years, that's when we're already in reactive mode. Recruiting's down, we're losing these new Gen Z associates. It's gonna feel different, and immediately what I see too many people do is go to this place of figuring out who's right, who's wrong, better or worse. It's just different, so learn what makes them unique.
We are Generation Z.